the fall of Lanka did not begin with an army. It did not begin with divine weapons or celestial chariots or the war cry of 100,000 Vanaras on the shore of the southern sea. It began in a forest clearing in the Dandak wilderness, in the late afternoon light of an ordinary day, when a woman walked out of the trees and saw two men she found beautiful. That is the seed of it. A desire, a rejection, a humiliation, and a woman who walked away from that clearing with blood on her face and fury in her chest and the ear of the most powerful demon king in the three worlds. If Surpanakha had not walked into that clearing on that specific afternoon, the Ramayana as the world knows it would not exist. Sita would not have been taken. Hanuman would not have crossed the ocean. Lanka would not have burned. The war that ended Ravana's empire and restored Dharma to the three worlds traces its first cause, not to the arrogance of a demon king, or the exile of a prince or the scheming of a jealous queen, but to a woman who was told no, told it cruelly, and decided that her brother was going to pay for the insult, whether he understood yet that he owed it or not. The story of Surpanakha is one of the most underexamined narratives in the entire Ramayana tradition, told quickly, dismissed as background, reduced to the role of catalyst for the events that everyone agrees are the real story. But Surpanakha is not background. She is the hinge. And when you understand her fully, you understand something about the Ramayana that the standard retelling almost never says. The war for Dharma was triggered by a personal grudge, carried to its target by a woman who knew exactly which wound in her brother to press and pressed it with precision. That story deserves to be told completely. I am your host, Guru Acharya, and I welcome you all to this exciting new episode of the channel, The Eternal Odyssey, where we explore the stories of myths and fantasies. Chapter 1: The Sister of the King of Lanka. Surpanakha was not a minor figure in the world of the Ramayana before the forest encounter. She was Meenakshi, that was her birth name, meaning fish-eyed, a name given in the tradition of celebrating beautiful eyes. She was the sister of Ravana, the most powerful Rakshas in the world, the scholar king of Lanka, whose 10 heads contained the accumulated knowledge of the Vedas, and whose 20 arms had once reached up and shaken the foundations of Mount Kailash, until Shiva had pressed him down with his toe, and held him pinned beneath the mountain for 1,000 years, before releasing him in respect for his devotion and his extraordinary tapasya. She was the daughter of the sage Vishrava and the Rakshasi Kakshi, and she occupied a position in the Rakshas social world that was simultaneously one of considerable prestige, as the sister of the great king, and considerable freedom, because the Rakshas tradition did not constrain its women in the same ways that the Brahminical social order constrained human women of comparable standing. Rakshasas were shapeshifters by nature and by practice. The ability to take whatever form served the moment, beautiful, terrifying, or simply different, was not a special power reserved for the powerful among them, but part of the basic Rakshas inheritance, the way walking upright is part of the human inheritance. Surpanakha used this ability with the freedom of someone who has always had it and does not think about it very much. She moved through the forests of the south in whatever form suited her mood or her purpose. She had been married to a Rakshas named Vidyujeva, who had died, in some accounts at the hands of Ravana himself in a political conflict, which would give the relationship between brother and sister a private wound underneath the public family loyalty. She was, in the years before the forest encounter, a woman of considerable power and considerable freedom and no particular fixed purpose, roaming the southern forests that her brother's kingdom bordered. And then, in the Dandak wilderness, she came across a fire, and beside the fire, to men of extraordinary appearance. Chapter 2: The Clearing and the Desire That Started Everything. The Valmiki Ramayana describes Surpanakha's first sight of Rama with a directness that the tradition has sometimes found uncomfortable and sometimes found illuminating, depending on the era and the reader. She saw him and she wanted him. Not as a Rakshasi identifies a target for violence or political calculation, but as a woman sees a man she finds so physically and spiritually compelling that every other consideration immediately becomes secondary. Rama was not simply handsome in the ordinary sense. The Ramayan's descriptions of him are descriptions of a being whose physical form was the visible expression of his inner nature, so that the beauty was not superficial, but radiated from something essential, and therefore impossible to look away from. He was seated in the forest in the simple dignity of a prince in exile, who has not ceased to be princely, dressed in the bark cloth of the forest ascetic, but carrying in his body the posture and the energy of someone formed for something larger than his current circumstances suggested. Lakshman was at his side, younger, equally striking in the specific way of someone whose beauty is inseparable from his alertness and his capability. Sita was nearby but perhaps not immediately visible to Surpanakha in the first moment of the encounter. What Surpanakha saw was two men, and she made a decision about one of them quickly and without extensive deliberation, which was consistent with both her nature and the freedoms her world permitted her. She took a beautiful form. The Valmiki Ramayana specifies this, noting that she shed her natural Rakshasi appearance and assumed a form designed to attract, and she approached Rama and told him directly what she wanted. She identified herself honestly as Ravana's sister. She told him that the forest was her domain, and that she possessed powers and freedoms that might interest a man in his situation. She proposed, without ambiguity, that he come away with her. Rama's response was not what she expected. It was not the response of a man who felt he needed to refuse an attractive woman's advances carefully, with sensitivity to her feelings. It was something considerably more human and considerably less graceful. He was amused. Chapter 3: The Deflection and the Deeper Wound. Rama told Surpanakha, with a gentleness that did not fully conceal the laughter underneath it, that he was already married. He gestured to Sita, this woman beside him, his wife, the person for whom he had left the comforts of Ayodhya and entered the forest without complaint, and explained that as a man with a wife, he could not entertain her proposal. But then he did something that the Valmiki Ramayana records without entirely resolving. He pointed to Lakshman. He suggested, with what the text implies was a playfulness not entirely appropriate to the situation, that his younger brother was unmarried, currently without a wife in the forest, and perhaps worth her attention. There is a long tradition of interpretive discussion about this moment, about whether Rama was being genuinely helpful, genuinely playful, or simply doing what people sometimes do when they want to end an uncomfortable conversation without being directly unkind, which is to redirect rather than refuse. What is not in dispute is the effect. Surpanakha, who had approached Rama with a specific desire and a specific proposal and the genuine confidence that her beauty, her power, and the directness of her intention made acceptance the most natural response, was being bounced between two brothers like a problem neither of them particularly wanted to handle. Lakshman was even less gracious about it than Rama. He told her that he was his brother's servant, and that she would not want to be the wife of a servant, and that she should return to Rama's consideration. This exchange, this back and forth between the brothers, with Surpanakha as the object being redirected, her proposal being treated as something between an inconvenience and a joke, carried in it an insult that went considerably deeper than a simple refusal. She had been dismissed. She had been treated as something not serious enough to require a real answer, not threatening enough to require a real response, not significant enough to receive the honesty of a direct no. The laughter, even if it was gentle, was the part that would not heal. Chapter 4: The Threat and the Knife. Surpanakha was not a being accustomed to being dismissed. She was the sister of the king of Lanka, a Rakshasi of considerable power, in her own territory, and she had been treated by two exiled princes hiding in a forest, as though she were an inconvenience to be managed rather than a person with a valid claim on a direct response. The deflection moved through her and became something else, something hotter and considerably less interested in beautiful forms or gracious proposals. She looked at Sita. Sita, who was the reason Rama had refused her. Sita, who was sitting beside the man Surpanakha wanted, and whose presence was the one variable that made the deflection to Lakshman even possible. The Valmiki Ramayana describes what happened next with the compressed intensity of a text recording a moment of violence. Surpanakha shed the beautiful form she had assumed and moved towards Sita in her natural Rakshasi form, with the specific intention of removing the obstacle. She was going to eliminate Sita. Not from a calculated strategic decision, but from the eruption of a rage that had found its most immediate available target. Lakshman stepped between them. What happened next is one of the most debated moments in the entire Ramayana, debated across centuries, across traditions, across the genuine and unresolved question of whether the response was appropriate to the provocation. Lakshman drew his sword, and he cut off her nose. In some accounts, the ears as well. He disfigured her permanently, deliberately, as a punishment and a message, and the name the tradition would give her forever after, Surpanakha, means the one with sharp nails or, in the most common interpretation, the one marked by the sword, the mutilated one. The name itself is the wound, worn publicly, carried forward into every telling of the story across every millennium of the tradition's life. She fled into the forest with blood on her face and the sound of the brothers behind her, and the absolute crystalline clarity that comes when humiliation and physical pain combine into a single experience that the mind cannot contain and therefore converts entirely into purpose. She knew where she was going. She was going to her brother. Chapter 5: The woman who knew which wound to press. She went first to Khara, her other brother, who commanded the Rakshas forces in the Dandaka forest. She presented herself to him in her wounded state, the blood, the disfigurement, the physical evidence of what had been done, and she asked for soldiers. Khara sent an army. Rama killed it. All of it, alone, in a battle that the Aranyakanda of the Valmiki Ramayana describes with the specific detail of a text that wants you to understand the military reality of what one exiled prince accomplished against a Rakshas force that should have been more than sufficient to destroy him. Khara led a second, larger force. Rama killed Khara. He killed Dushana, the other commander. He killed the generals and the soldiers, and whatever remained of the Dandaka forest's Rakshas military capacity in an afternoon's work that was, in military terms, absolute and total. Surpanakha watched all of this. She understood that the men she had brought against Rama from within the existing structures of her immediate world were not sufficient. The problem required a different scale of response. She needed her brother. not Khara, who was dead. The other one. The great one. The one whose name made the three worlds careful. She traveled to Lanka, and she presented herself to Ravana in his court, and she began one of the most effective acts of emotional and political manipulation in the entire Ramayana tradition. Not because she lied to him, but because she understood him well enough to tell him the truth in exactly the sequence, and with exactly the emphasis that would produce the result she needed. She did not lead with her grief. She did not lead with her disfigurement, though she made sure it was visible. She did not ask for revenge directly, because she understood that Ravana, king of Lanka, scholar of the Vedas, ten-headed wielder of power across the three worlds, would not mobilize his kingdom for his sister's wounded pride in the way she needed him to mobilize it. She led with something else. She led with Sita. Chapter 6, the description that doomed Lanka. Surpanakha described Sita to Ravana with the specific, crafted precision of someone who knows their audience completely. She did not begin with what had been done to her. She began with what she had seen, the woman in the forest, the wife of the exiled prince, the most beautiful human woman the three worlds contained. She described Sita's appearance with an intensity and a detail that the Valmiki Ramayana records as a list of physical attributes so deliberately constructed that each element built on the last, each quality she named, making the composite picture more extraordinary, more desirable, more specifically calculated to engage the attention of a being whose relationship with desire was as large and as ungoverned as every other aspect of his nature. She was doing something very precise. She was not asking Ravana to avenge her. She was offering him something. She was saying, in the language of a woman who knows her brother's appetites and knows how to speak to them, there is something in that forest that is worth your personal attention. Something you have not seen. Something that the man who took my nose has, and that you, the Lord of Lanka, the most powerful Rakshas in the world, should have instead. She positioned Sita's abduction not as revenge, not as the response to an insult, not as the satisfaction of a wounded sister's grievance, but as an acquisition, a correction of an inequality, a retrieval of something that should have been his to begin with by simple virtue of his being who he was. This was the manipulation's genius. Ravana, who might have weighed carefully the wisdom of attacking the family of Dashrath, who might have calculated the military risks of antagonizing a prince, whose capacity had just been demonstrated in the destruction of an entire forest army, did not weigh any of that. He saw Sita through his sister's description before he had ever laid eyes on her, and he wanted her, and the wanting bypassed every other consideration the way certain desires always bypass the intelligence of their host, regardless of how many heads that intelligence occupies. Surpanakha had not asked him for revenge. She had installed in him a desire that he would do anything to satisfy. The rest would follow from his nature. Chapter 7, the golden deer and the line drawn in the earth. What followed from Ravana's decision is the sequence of events that the Ramayana places at its literal and symbolic center: the golden deer, the long chase, the line in the earth, the moment when everything that had been built across years of exile came apart in a single afternoon. Ravana used Maricha, the Rakshas who could take any form, who had encountered Rama before and survived it, and who understood exactly what Rama was capable of in a way that Ravana, who had not yet seen him, did not, and sent him into the forest in the form of a deer of supernatural beauty, a deer with golden flanks and jeweled antlers and a quality of magical loveliness that Sita could not help but notice and want. Sita asked Rama to catch it for her. Rama went. He chased the deer deeper into the forest than either of them intended, and when the chase reached its end, and his arrow found its target, the dying Maricha cried out in Rama's voice, cried out for Lakshman, cried out for Sita, cried out with the specific sounds of a man in mortal danger, and the cry reached the forest clearing where Sita and Lakshman waited. Sita heard it and believed it. She sent Lakshman after his brother. Lakshman drew a line in the earth at the threshold of their clearing, a boundary charged with protective power, a line she must not cross regardless of what appeared outside it, and he went. And then Ravana came. In the disguise of a wandering Brahman, in the form of something that looked like it needed help, in the specific shape of an approach that the tradition of hospitality required Sita to respond to. She crossed the line to give him alms. The moment her foot crossed the boundary Lakshman had drawn, the protection ended. Ravana shed his disguise. He took her. And everything that Surpanakha had set in motion in a forest clearing with a desire and a deflection and a wound to her face arrived at the consequence it had always been building toward. Sita was in Lanka. The war had begun. Chapter 8: The Weight of the First Cause. The tradition of the Ramayana has always understood that the war for Lanka was a war for dharma, that what was at stake in the conflict between Rama and Ravana was not merely Sita's freedom, but the restoration of a cosmic order that Ravana's combination of power and ungoverned desire had been disrupting across decades of conquest. This is true, and the tradition is correct to understand it this way. But it is also true, and the tradition is less willing to sit with this part, that the specific chain of events that brought the Dharma war about was set in motion by a woman's personal grievance, managed through her understanding of her brother's appetites, and executed through a series of individual human moments that had nothing cosmic about them in their immediate texture. A desire in a forest clearing. A deflection that became an insult. A sword drawn when a woman threatened a woman. A sister's walk to her brother's court. A description of beauty calibrated to produce exactly the response it produced. None of this was written in the stars in any visible sense. It was the product of specific choices made by specific beings in specific moments, choices whose consequences compounded with the relentless logic of cause and effect until they reached a scale that encompassed the burning of a kingdom and the death of a king. The Ramayana is a text about the cosmic struggle between dharma and adharma, between the divine and the demonic, between the devotion of Rama and the pride of Ravana. It is also a text about a woman who was humiliated in a forest and knew exactly what to do about it. Both of these things are true simultaneously. And the second one is the part that the standard retelling consistently undervalues, because it is more comfortable to begin the story with Sita's kidnapping, with the drama of the abduction and the grief of the exile and the great machinery of the war, than to begin it where it actually began. In a clearing. With laughter. With a sword. With a woman who walked to her brother's court and said, "I know what you want, and I know where to find it." Surpanakha did not make Ravana what he was. She did not create the pride that would ultimately destroy him. But she found the door in him that his nature had left open, and she walked through it with the specific and purposeful intention of someone who knows exactly what is on the other side. And the fall of Lanka walked through behind her. A forest clearing. A laugh that should have been a no. A wound to a face. And a woman who walked to her brother and said the exact right words in exactly the right order to bring down the most powerful kingdom in the world. Surpanakha has been background in this story for 4,000 years. Today, we put her at the center, where the truth says she belongs. If this retelling gave you something, if it changed the angle from which you see the Ramayana, if it made the story larger and more honest than it was before, then do not keep it to yourself. Hit that like button and let the world know that mythology told with full truth and full complexity deserves to be heard. Share this with someone who loves the Ramayana and has never been told where it actually began. And subscribe, because every week this channel goes back into the great stories of this civilization and finds the part that was left out, the character who was flattened, the moment that was rushed past, and tells it the way it was always meant to be told, completely, honestly, with every layer intact. The story does not begin where you were told it begins. Come find out where it really starts. See you until next time. Thank you.